Getting ready to come back in for the 2 sessions this afternoon. So we're not officially back from lunch yet. Our speakers, our moderators and speakers are lining up. So SG, what can we look forward to this afternoon? You said this afternoon is like sponsored.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, so we've given our sponsors a space and they've had some very interesting presentations lined up. We have the likes of Huawei, global leader in technologies such as 5G, for example. We have Viasat, global satellite service provider. If you're traveling on any of the airlines and want to access to Wi-Fi, you know, companies like Viasat are the ones that are behind the Wi-Fi on airplanes and ships and stuff. We have Carib, one of our CTU member states, that will be speaking about achieving greater control and sustainability in digital transformation. Of course, you have Digicel. Who doesn't know Digicel? Major player in the telecoms market. And we have TSTT operating here in Trinidad. So a number of lightning presentations.
Yeah. I noticed the word lightning, and I heard lightning while we were on lunch.
Quick, fast, informative, you know.
In and out, but I mean, this is great because, of course, you know, a lot of times people tend to think that seminars or events like these are very policy-driven, which they need to be as well.
Yeah.
But that really it provides a space for the private sector to be able to interface more directly and not just, you know, bring up the rear kind of, you know.
Yeah, and they're the ones driving these solutions in the market, right?
Right.
I mean, government, of course, set policies and so on, but they're the ones doing the research and development on applications that can help us move forward in terms of the digital transformation. So,
yeah. Okay. Is there anything else we want to remind people about the leaderboard and
for sure. Well, look, we're trying to make the whole virtual meeting experience a good one.
Yeah.
So I think people are all zoomed out and they're tired of just connecting on Zoom now for the last year and a half, and they want something a little more interactive. And so we've had some cultural presentations. Keisha Codrington from Trinidad and Tobago, Arthur Chapman.
And now I'll tell them that the playlist was yours, right?
well, yeah, I mean, I'm a regionalist at heart. Yeah. So, you know, the last song with Caribbean man, person, woman.
I was telling Leroy that he needs to change that now.
Well, you know, like mankind. So we understand, but, you know, the whole notion is that together we achieve. As a space, we want to create a single market and economy and really make it an interesting and vibrant place for people to operate, work, and move around.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a kind of theme cutting through a number of the presentations over the last day and the last Monday as well as today, this idea of the CTU's work in really trying to drive this single ICT space, which we've been talking about since I was a little girl.
Yeah. Well, so now, I mean, you know, we started with the West Indies Federation.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, let's not bring Sparrow into this one from 10 Leaves Note.
And then we, you know, moved to the Caribbean single market and economy. And the CTU is promoting the single ICT space, which is the digital embodiment of the CSME.
Yeah.
Which means people can move. You had at the last panel presenter from Digicel, Franco Carroll, and actually we are in the midst of negotiations with Digicel and
that was kind
others
of exciting.
about, you know, moving freely in the region and being able to access data services without the exorbitant roaming costs. So these are things that we're advocating for the benefit of our citizens.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you get to go and relax a little bit behind the scenes, and I get to sit in the hot seat.
Yeah.
So stay with us. We'll be right back. Get your coffee, get your tea. Remember to look for the link on the platform. Join the session. We'll be back with you in a flash. Nice. Well, welcome back. We were just chatting with Rodney Taylor, CTU, kind of setting up the afternoon. We're so happy that you could join us this afternoon. If you were with us from the start of the day today, it's great, a fellow traveler. And if you're just joining in, well, so happy to have you as well. We'd now like to invite Mr. Cesar Funes, the Public Relations Vice President of Huawei Latin America, to deliver a keynote address entitled Digital Transformation Driving Economic Growth. Cesar has worked at Huawei for more than 10 years in various commercial and business development positions, leading the introduction of 5G technology in the region, and he was recently appointed as Vice President of Public Relations. So Cesar, are you in the room and standing by?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Oh,
Good
good afternoon.
afternoon.
Well, very good of you to join us. I hope you had a good lunch.
Well, actually, I'm based in Mexico, therefore lunch is after this one.
Oh,
so...
siesta. Okay.
Not
Okay.
really.
Okay. Well, you're with us now from Mexico, so we look forward to you sharing your thoughts with us in this session.
Sure. So I'm ready. So I would like to
The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. I would like to first thank CTU for the invitation and the honor to be part of this great week. So I'm going to share my screen. I wish I'm ready. So as you just described it, we are here in Huawei looking at the process of this changing world. And we have clear that information and communications technologies are actually helping a lot during this pandemic process, but also helping us to recovery in the economy. So I have prepared a few slides to share with you in the next 20 minutes, including the 3 following topics. How do we see the technology helping the economic recovery? Then some technical definitions from our partner Boston Consulting Group that recently helped us to finish a study regarding the digital transformation process in the world, and certain opportunities that we see for Latin America and the Caribbean. So first of all, I think we all know that it's a clear trend. We are actually in the 4th industrial revolution, and this current situation, it's all related to digital technology. And we see that there are several things happening in the world, of course, with a strong focus on sustainable development, but clearly that we expect a new growth of the economy based on digitalization. There are certain applications that are growing faster, such as smart cities, or actually the verticals evolving to a digitalization, but as well how the consumers are changing the experience, or having a better experience in different services that they're getting. In general, we see that there is an upgrade on different scenarios for multiple different specific situations. So as part of the background, we all know that the impact on the economy due to the pandemic was quite important. And according to different sources, we see that the recovery is going to take a while. So very little countries are already getting recovered this year. Some others will do it next year, but many more will do it a year after, or even until 2024 or 2025. So what we hear, for instance, from Boston, is that a proactive government and effective market is needed, an action. So there is a roadmap for the development of the digital economy. This is also the thinking of different organizations, such as the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, or the International Monetary Fund, that they, based on their analysis, the support of the authorities is important, either by promoting some incentives for the investment, potentially give away funds for basic services or needs of the population. But what the general conclusion is that the investment in infrastructure is important, but it's extremely important to try to focus those resources in digital infrastructure, including connectivity, expanding the coverage of broadband, having the ability to have data centers, etc. So digital infrastructure investment is something that everybody has a consensus in terms of this could pay more for more time. So the digital economy also has three key factors. Of course, looking at the driving economic growth. That's quite important because with this situation, being isolated, we must take advantage of the availability of technologies and services that are based on digitalized solutions. But we also have to be clear that social inclusion is also key, so which will really help us to improve the social well-being. So the digital application must have an important focus on reducing the gender divides and creating new job opportunities, try to improve the income of the whole family, looking at different ways of doing that, people that is not connected, and I'll show you some examples later. But as well, quite important to keep in mind that we must be promoting environmental protection and emissions reductions, and taking advantage of technologies such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, big data, cloud services, etc. This could help us to effectively improve energy conservation and protect the environment, not only by the fact that the equipments are more efficient, but also by using the technology to monitor and to better understand the data available to take action and be proactive in protecting the environment. So when we see the impact on economic growth, we see this chart that we also got from the study, is that there is a growth in terms of the digital economy as part of a share of the GDP, and how fast has that part of the resources been growing. And we see certain countries that are very well positioned in the chart, such as Ireland, South Korea, of course, China, Germany, US, and France. So we can try to follow them, but other smaller countries are also doing good in terms of promoting the digitalization of the economy. And there are many countries in the Western Europe or the Southeast of Asia, and we could take advantage of those examples to try to follow them and avoid having some mistakes in the region. In terms of social inclusion, we always want to work with third-party organizations, in this case, working closely with the ITU as well, no? Together with ITU and CTU, to try to promote certain technologies to improve the public services, such as health or education, using telemedicine or e-learning, trying to connect the unconnected, having universal connectivity, and try to bridge the digital divide. Of course, promoting sustainability in the rural areas, not only giving them the technology to access those services, but potentially to help them to develop some applications that will help them to do, for instance, agriculture in a more automated way. And we are having examples in different parts of the world, in Africa, in the Southeast of Asia, and as well in Latin America and the Caribbean. In terms of green environment, we always are looking at the way to reduce the impact of the emissions, but which in general terms, it can impact economically if we don't do something. We all heard that the temperature of the globe is rising significantly. So we must keep this in mind in order to avoid significant impact on the availability of food or our ability to grow different goods for the benefit of the society. Now, on the second part of the presentation, talking about the definition of digital economy, what is clear to all of us is that in the very early stages of the world, the people was working with the available resources. So everything was based on whatever resource I have, I can use it. So I basically had a linear related capacity. But then when we get into the industrial age, we were able to use machinery to improve the productivity or the efficiency of certain activities that we were doing. So taking advantage of the industrialization, we were able to get better from the same initial variables. But then in the information age, which is in the latest few decades, we see that the important good here is the information. Data is the new oil, and we should take that seriously and take advantage of the usage, the ethic use of the data for the benefit of the society. This can give us as well, together with the information, the new available energy resources, and together with those two, having a vision, a data-driven strategy, we can make new businesses, improve the current services, or even have governments that are more efficient, and which will be an actual result of having better result out of the same variables. This is what the studies calls the multi-superlinear development, in which 1 + 1 could be more than 4. So the important is that we continue encouraging all the administrations to promote the economic growth by the use of the key engine, which is the digital infrastructure. Just as an example, we see some countries, either richer countries or countries in development process. What we can see is that the more they invest on digital economy, the faster the growth of the country could be. And this is an example of the past decade. And these are some examples of, and we're looking at countries investing more and more in digital infrastructure. Also, as part of the definitions from the OECD, we see that the definition it's from a holistic vision. It's based on 3 tiers. So it is important to use technology, but that is not enough to consider we are ready and inside the digital economy. It is core to have hardware, software, services, telecommunications, broadband, which will help us to get into the way to the digital economy. But then when we really start to get into the digital economy is when we have digital platforms and we have mobile applications and we start using, for instance, e-commerce. And it's where certain activities can be done directly using the technology, just as we witnessed during all these 18 months of isolation. So taking advantage of the technology, we can start doing some digital transform activities that will get us into the initial stage of the digital economy. But when it really becomes interesting and important is when we have a total vertical industry transformation, such as having Industry 4.0 or precision agriculture, or using this for ports or tourism, having the ability to use not only the technology, but the data that we are getting out of the services that we are actually doing all the time in the smartphone, in the different devices, intelligent devices, through the cloud services. So we have the digital input, and eventually we will also use it for additional digital outputs or an actual physical activity. So this is how, for instance, the OECD looks at the integration of the digital economy. So what kind of opportunities do we see for the region? Well, first of all, we can check what other countries are doing. One country that I just recently learned is one of the most digitalized countries is Estonia. They started to do this back in the 90s. So it's not something that we can do from one year to the other. It's going to take time. And they have witnessed very positive results, having almost 99% of the public services already online. They say that they have saved around 1,407 years of working time, which really impacts very importantly in the cost of administration. And in the other hand, Estonia believes, they estimate that with these e-government efficiencies, they could potentially lift an annual GDP by 2%. That's quite important. Other countries, quite significant, such as the UK, they reduce the paper usage by 21% just by adding multi-channel digital tax platform, or as well adding, they claim they have added almost 3 billion of pounds in tax revenues in the past, during a period of 6 years, by having a digital tool of the e-government. Other examples such as Singapore, they believe by doing e-government transformation generates savings in the range of 14.5 millions in a year. So an opportunity that I'm trying to emphasize here, creating demand for the people to get more close to the technology, is the e-government applications. Another example or a very important tool that we need is to continue the development of talent. And we know that many countries have a lack of digital skills. And in this case, it's not only something that happens in Latin America or the Caribbean, it's also happening in big countries, in the rest of the region or other big countries. So what we need to do is to continue improving the skills of the people, upskilling and reskilling with upskilling and reskilling programs. In this case, I'm glad to share with you that we have recently signed agreements with the CELAC and also with the Latin American, the Caribbean office of UNESCO, OREALC, in both cases, sharing scholarships for young people, young women, to get connected to the ICT world. And these are going to be available for the majority of the countries in the Latin American and Caribbean regions. And finally, I would like to stress the fact that there are a few things to do when we look at the economy impact of the small and medium enterprises in the region. We see that they have a huge amount or a strong impact. From 50 to 70 to 80% of the economy is based on SMEs. And we all know that SMEs are not necessarily ready to get totally digitally transformed. So one thing that we could see from examples, for instance, in Singapore, we see that there are certain specific programs to guide the SMEs to get connected to the digital transformation. So sometimes SMEs and entrepreneurs doesn't even know what's available there or what's not. Another example is that they have a pre-certified digital solution, again in Singapore and Japan, that help the SMEs to understand better the solutions that they can immediately integrate into their processes to start getting connected to this digital economy. I already talked about talent. E-commerce is also very important. Many small and medium businesses can do business not only in their own country, but probably they can do business outside of their country. And we can help them to do the e-commerce outside of the current limitations of the physical geography. And in this case, I can say that in Malaysia as well, Singapore and Japan, there are some initiatives that are helping the SMEs to go global. Funding is not some, I mean, it is something that is always useful. Different countries can help with fundings to incentivize some investments and make the wheel rolling and start from there. And of course, if possible, try to invest in research and development with SMEs, which is going to create the total ecosystem for the country or the region. So certain cases we have seen in some countries in Latin America and the Caribbean specifically focused on e-commerce. So basically with this, I finished my presentation, just saying that we are in Huawei not only supporting technology, but also the green environment and the social inclusion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Cesar. That was quite an in-depth presentation. And following on even from your colleague this morning, was sort of spelling out some of, in greater detail, some of the initiatives being undertaken by Huawei, and of course, working with partners in government, in institutions, and flagging up something really very important as well. I've been joined by Trevor Prevatt, who is coming in to moderate the next session, and that is talking about the importance of SMEs, and that very startling statistic about 70 to 80% of SMEs and the need for them to be able to scale up and to be able to transform and participate in the digital economy. So I'm sure there'll be some questions and comments coming from you. I'm not sure that we're going to a Q&A now. I'm not, if someone can give me a hint as to whether or not we're not, okay. But I know that you're going to be around and that you're going to be available to field questions and certainly provide feedback. Thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you all, and I'll be happy to answer anything that I can. Okay, great. Have a good afternoon. So now we enter into the sponsor lightning presentations, which will be moderated by Trevor Prevatt here, a consultant at the CTU. The very first session speakers, this would be Miss Amy Mehlman, Vice President, U.S. Government Affairs and Policy, Viasat, and she'll be speaking on accelerating Caribbean digital transformation through next generation satellite technologies. Let me just quickly reference am I on the right path here in terms of talking? Yes, oh, I am. Yes. Okay, great. And then we have Eamonn Sheehy, Irish, definitely, Director of Public Sector Cloud Carib, and Mrs. Scott MacKenzie, CEO of Cloud Carib, will be speaking on achieving greater control and sustainability in digital transformation. We have Mr. David Geary, General Counsel, Digicel Group, who will be addressing regulating the single Caribbean ICT space. He's a General Counsel for the Digicel Group. We've just switched cameras, and he's been in the region since 2013, having moved around where Digicel has its operations, like in the Pacific and so. And then we have Mr. Darryl Duke, who is the General Manager, Enterprise Services, acting General Manager, that would be at TSTT, who will speak on cloud services. He's the General Manager, and he has over 25 years of experience in leadership. And so, Trevor, I'm going to throw it straight at you because this is your baby now.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joanne. Yes, and good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to our sponsor lightning presentations. Yes, I'm not going to take up any of the time from our presenters, but what I'd like to do though is just change up the order a little. And because Mr. Duke unfortunately has an engagement that he can't get out of, and so we'd like to go first. So with the agreement of our other presenters, I would like to invite Mr. Darryl Duke of TSTT to present on behalf on cloud services.
Are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. And good afternoon. And thank you very much for the privilege. I apologize to my other presenters. I really appreciate the time that they're giving me to present to you. It's indeed a pleasure. And my name is Darryl Duke. As you know, I'm the Acting General Manager of TSTT and Enterprise Services. And it's indeed a pleasure to share with you one of TSTT's treasure jewels, that being its cloud services and the data center that supports it. It really assists us in TSTT and certainly our customers, be it in the government and other business space, in elegantly transforming into the digital world. And permit me to share a short story with you in terms of how this cloud service developed. The cloud service, and I'm sure is very similar to those within the other telecom industries, was always a top secret for the IT area. So there's this secretive room that IT held all its infrastructure. And month by month, year by year, we in the commercial area was able to sneak in some space day by day. And eventually, where it was a top secret, it did now become a very viable commercial space where we now occupy over 70 or 80% of the data center with the IT taking a backseat to the commercial entity. So we're very interested and very supportive of business within the cloud industry. And I'll share with you how TSTT has developed to support business TT as well as the region within the Caribbean. So I'll share my presentation. Cloud, as I said, certainly within the industry has developed within many sectors, that be it between finance to manufacturing. Over the, unfortunately, 18 months of the pandemic, we have seen a major shift and a major growth within the government and the healthcare sector within Trinidad and Tobago in terms of adopting the cloud industry. Of course, within TSTT, we want to make sure you focus on your core business while we as TSTT do the heavy lifting. And the cloud industry and our data center is really to make your life a lot better. That's our intent within TSTT and Vmware business, is to make lives better. And the cloud and the growth of cloud and the use of our data center is certainly in line and compliance with us making it a lot better for corporate TNT. Our data center, TSTT's data center, we have invested significant monies within the data center to provide what means most to you, our corporate customers, that being it in reliability and availability. TSTT's data center over the last 10 years has had 100%, and yes, I'm talking 100% uptime over the last 10 years, as well as cloud uptime over that period of time. So we are heavily invested in our data center and spend a lot of time to ensure that the uptime for our data center is at 100% or within the 5 nines to ensure that you, our customer, don't have to suffer or feel any pains with you putting your business in our hands. What is very important for us, especially with respect to cloud availability and reliability, is our certification. So it is not that Darryl Duke is saying so, or that TSTT is boasting about its cloud availability and reliability, but we have independent persons certifying our reliability and availability. What is near and dear to us is our recently awarded EPI certification for the DCOS, which is Data Center Operation Standard, which we have conformed to maturity level 3. So that is really measuring our processes. Processes are managed, measured, and controlled. What is also key to our certification is our ANSWER, or TIA 942 rated 3 certification, which deals with the infrastructure which supports our data center. So we're able to do maintenance and whatnot, these type of activities, while keeping the data center up and running. So we are very, very proud within TSTT that the DCOS 3 certification, as well as the TIA rated 3 certification, we're the only data center in the Caribbean that shares this certification. So that's what I would say in our simple parlance, we would say, Trevor, is that we can have our Bugatti is certified as TIA, and then we're able to drive it the way you're supposed to drive it, which is certified by DCOS. So we have our cake and we can eat it very well too. And the best of the best, certainly, to support our customers. What is also very key, apart from reliability, is cloud availability. And that deals with our redundancy within the cloud, our resiliency, and it is near like artificial intelligence within the cloud, where it's a self-healing process. If within the cloud infrastructure you realize there's some challenges there, it will automatically transfer into different infrastructure that does not have the similar type challenges, and that's what we really have in the hypervisors, allow for that self-healing, we call it self-healing, as well as we have reliable infrastructure. We have redundancy to ensure that our infrastructure is fully available to support our customers, because you are putting our trust of your infrastructure in TSTT's hand. So we're ensuring, not via my word or TSTT's word, via our independent auditors, that this infrastructure is highly available and highly reliable. So allow me to share with you, I know you love to hear from me, but allow me to share with you a video that gives you a sneak peek on the adventure or journey within our data center. Thank you.
TSTT is the only local service provider in Trinidad and Tobago, and we are proud to own 1 out of 2 TIA 942B accredited rated 3 data centers in the Caribbean and 1 out of 5 in the Latin American region.
Our company, EPI, is worldwide, in presence with offices in more than 10 countries worldwide, and with partners in more than 60 countries, and having done audits, trainings in more than 150 cities worldwide.
So in terms of infrastructure, we have two 12 kV feeds from TNTech, which covers our power aspect. Then we have backup power facilitated by our two 1.2 megawatt generators. And this is backed up by our bulk fuel tank, which allows us about a little more than a month's worth of fuel for the amount of time that we have. Also, we have conditioned power via our rotary type UPSs. These are environmentally friendly as opposed to static type UPSs. We have no batteries. It actually conditions the power supply as opposed to most static type UPSs. Whereas we are able to change and convert that odd supply that we get from TNTech into a perfect world supply to provide to our critical load in our data center.
We've really invested a lot into getting the data centers fully certified.
TSTT's data center is TSTT's state-of-the-art data center in terms of electrical, power, control, and IT hardware.
We are TIA 942B certified as a rated 3 data center. This accreditation not only covers the electrical and mechanical aspects of the data center, but includes categories such as security, architecture, networking infrastructure, fire suppression, and safety.
It is very important that the certification TIA 942 has 4 main areas, which are architectural, the building, location, etc. Second, mechanical, including cooling, safety, security, fire suppression. Third, electrical, and fourth, telecommunications, to make sure that your communications are uptime and reliable.
We developed a complex system based on world-class technology and sound infrastructure for our own success.
This TIA certification also means for our customers that we're fully certified in producing and also rendering telecommunication services and connectivity for our clients.
We know the effects of the labor and all the natural disasters and the laws that are prohibitive towards people in the region putting their stuff on the cloud.
We at TSTT could give you that comfort zone and that your data is perfectly fine and secure. We have partnered with all the major security firms, whether it be Checkpoint and Palo Alto, to provide you with that comfort. And we are also have expertise in all the engineers that operate our cloud services. So they are aware of all the new trends in the industry and to assure you that your data also stays on island and there's nowhere outside. So to give you that sort of comfort zone.
Our client base, okay, is from the big companies like HP, IBM that we have partners with, but also big telco companies, government agencies, banks, universities, everyone that has a data center, because they need to make sure that the reliability of their data center is secure and they do the right service and a reliable service to their customers.
This data center is TIA 942 certified, which means it meets international global standards and the highest standards for data centers.
Thank you very much for that. Once, as I shared with you before, once the big secret of the IT department, we're now very happy to share with Trinidad and Tobago and the region as a whole. We at TSTT are very, very proud of our data center and the services that we provide. And we have a whole suite of cloud services that we provide, be it via co-location, we have infrastructure as a service, we have the hosted PBX service, which is very well utilized within Trinidad and Tobago. We have backup as a service. We have software as a service, which we have our own self-developed e-tender service, which I'm sure we use right through Trinidad and Tobago. And we have also have international engagement within the region, as well as disaster recovery as service. And more importantly, today is a great day, apart from sharing time with the CTU. Life is on with TSTT and Vmobile, as we have just launched our Huawei Hub, our video collaboration as a service, which is another item that we add to our cloud suite of services. Be it this lovely device is a smart hub, once placed, a smart TV, once placed in the cloud, is like a smart TV on steroids. And we have launched that today, and we're very, very proud to have launched that today in conjunction with our strategic partner, Huawei. So we have a lot of services which are ably supported by our very well certified data center. What is very, very key for us in TSTT is the Vmware Cloud. And the Vmware Cloud allows us to store data across multiple platforms in diverse geographical locations. Being a QRC old boy as myself, and I'm sure Mr. Prevatt will be very aware of that, one of our greatest scholars, Dr. Eric Williams, the then Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago in 1961, made a statement with respect to Jamaica's department from the Federation. I know the committee was talking about the Federation before, that 1 from 10 leaves north. And that really speaks to our key focus on regional unity. And I would like to say that with our cloud storage, which can be within multiple geographical regions, as well as our diverse fiber network connectivity across the region, we can unify TSTT as Dr. Eric Williams, or unify the Caribbean as Dr. Eric Williams wanted to happen with the cloud. And we at TSTT and Vmobile Business are very uniquely positioned, providing a world-class data center with world-class international fiber network connectivity to provide that service to those countries within the region that are participating in this conference. And with those local entities that have regional presence, we are very willing and able to assist you. Certainly, in closing, there are multiple benefits of cloud computing, which have seen exponential growth within the 3 to 4 years of us really pushing the cloud within the region. That be it costs, where a lot of people, instead of investing capital expenditure into infrastructure, now change it to a recurrent model, and it make the cost a lot more attractive and more palatable, especially in the economic times that we face. Availability, which I shared with you before, 100% availability within the cloud. You putting your infrastructure into our data center allows you that, or gives you that assurance, and not because I said so, but because once again, we have the regional certification of 100% uptime. So you have available infrastructure. With cloud, you also have flexibility. You're able to add resources, remove resources as you see fit to deal with the cyclical nature of your business. And certainly, if you're looking at disaster recovery or backup as a service, you have business continuity, which is very key for businesses. Always on. Life is on with Vmobile, and we want to ensure that your business is always on to support your customers in the key industries that we spoke about before. That being said, it is certainly a pleasure for TSTT to support business Trinidad and Tobago and business West Indies in terms of moving your business and ensuring that you're on the right path to digital transformation. I'd like to thank you, and do have a safe and enjoyable week. Thank you.
Okay, Darryl, thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. And what I caught was it's TSTT's treasure jewel. You're assisting elegant transfer to the digital world companies. And I think particularly important, what you're trying to do is using the cloud, you're helping companies really help their customers, which is really the end game. So thank you very much for your presentation. I'd like us to move on quickly to, oh, and by the way, I'm not a QRCO boy, but I did send my son there. So he went there. Okay, so I would like to move on without any further ado to Miss Amy Mehlman. She is the Vice President with Viasat, US Government Affairs and Policy, and she'll talk to us about accelerating Caribbean digital transformation through next generation satellite technologies. Over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trevor, for that kind introduction. I'm just making sure that you can see my screen. in a good way?
I'm hearing you perfectly.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, yes, very good.
Okay, wonderful. Again, thank you for that introduction, and I will never go behind Darryl again because that was an amazing that was an amazing presentation.
My apologies. I think
so-
you tricked me.
No, the time wasn't it. It was just a great presentation. So anyway, kudos to him. But thank you for the opportunity to provide these remarks. I want to thank CTU Secretary General Taylor and the entire CTU team, including the President, Honorable Minister Melfer Nicholas, as well as the distinguished ministers of the governments represented today. And as my colleague Ryan Johnson mentioned on Monday, Viasat recognizes that CTU has played a critical role in the region for the last 30 years. And we look forward to working with you in the future on all of your regional initiatives. Among other things, we believe that Viasat can provide additional perspectives and insights into the industry that's rapidly changing, one that would, we would argue is at a tipping point given the COVID pandemic. And, hopefully we have some solutions that can get us there. I wanted to mention one other thing, which I thought was great to see, that the region is actually embracing satellite in every way. I was pleased to see the, creation of a Caribbean space agency and the endorsements recently from several of the countries in the CTU, and those that have signed the actual agreement. So that was very, very nice to see. And we look forward to working through that as well. Hopefully working on combined issues that cross both spectrum and space. So Viasat is looking to connect everybody, right? Everything, everyone. We know they can be connected, and we're trying to make sure that we do it and do it affordably. We find better ways to deliver connections with the capacity to change the world on the ground, in the air, and at sea. Importantly, COVID unfortunately stopped a lot of our travel. We're hoping that that picks up. I think it has already, but that is a meaningful piece of the Caribbean world for sure, as far as transportation to and from the region for tourism and the economic growth that comes with that. We provide a lot of services for in-flight connectivity, other types of eSIM type services on the ground and at sea. So we're looking for that to pick up, and certainly want to work with folks on the ground to do that. So we've been around for a while. We have a number of folks around the world. We've expanded into Latin American region and the Caribbean region significantly over the last few years, and we're pretty excited about that. We had a number of satellites that we had launched already. The latest covering the area has, the capacity, more capacity than anybody had ever had in a satellite before. And the next ones that we're going to be launching are going to have double that capacity. The Viasat 3s that we're actually about to launch next year will cover the entire region. They will offer over 1 terabit per second of capacity. That means, 100 megabits per second or more base speeds to the consumer. And importantly, that's at an affordable rate. Everything that we do is in an attempt to get adoption, right? To make sure that everybody and anybody that can get online, if they need to get online, can do it and do so affordably. Our satellites, are designed for about 15 years of life. They're expected, as I mentioned, to be that much more cost efficient than even Viasat 2. So again, as I was mentioning, these are the highest capacity satellites that there were, to date when we launched them, and we're going to be launching more going forward. The reason we're doing what we're doing is to get the platforms that are so important to what is happening today even, right, with telemedicine, e-learning, e-banking, and e-commerce, so that we can actually do what we need to do from home or anywhere. And we can, again, as you'll see on this chart, do it a little bit more affordably. GSO technology still seems to remain the most cost-efficient technology. Others are coming down; those costs are coming down. That's great, but I think it's everybody's incentive and intention to make sure things are affordable for everybody in the region. So what we do, we mentioned, obviously we want to connect everybody. These are residential plans, they're internet Wi-Fi cafes or other services like that, through our Viasat community internet, in the air, at sea. We actually recently also purchased a company called RigNet that provides solutions for the oil and gas industry, among other things. So we are heavily involved in trying to figure out how to get these solutions down into the CTU region and make sure that we work with folks, on the ground level. Certainly some of the folks that are participating in the CTU events today, are certainly folks that we're looking to work with and partner with into the future. So what are our verticals in the region? Residential, as I mentioned a second ago. Education, this is critical, right? We are connecting schools. We're doing that in Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. We'd like to do more. We think we can do it in a way, first of all, that's fast, right? We can get there and get there quick, which is really important because there's a lot of policy that's being pushed out today with a lot of funding behind, fibering countries and whatnot. It's going to take a really long time to do that. And, satellite wireless technologies are all very, more efficient and quick, to get to the consumer. We are supporting the financial, oil and gas industry, tourism, as I mentioned, hotels, industrial areas, all these different businesses to get them and keep them connected. And I mentioned the mobility sector, but telemedicine is one other thing that has been key to us, whether it's offering service on ambulances to make sure that as somebody's picked up, you're actually able to connect in a meaningful way, get the information that needs to get from the actual ambulance with all the data that's in there to the hospital when somebody gets there. It's much like your car, right? Your car has electronics and you're trying to get that information to the auto service person so that when you get in there, it's all done and ready and, it can get done quick. It's a matter of making sure that you have that continuity of information. Disaster recovery and response, obviously, this is key to the region. We're just a resilient infrastructure. The dish goes down, the dish goes right back up. You can just put it back up. We're working on additional means to make sure that we maintain electricity as well to these different Wi-Fi hotspots or even to the home to figure out ways to maintain some of that connectivity if needed. We did that a lot in Puerto Rico when there was a hurricane down there. So we're just exploring additional ways to maintain that connectivity. And of course, generally connecting the unconnected. We do that, whether it's sort of in a city, in rural areas, wherever you need to be connected, that's where we are. Obviously, we all, certainly want to meet all these sustainable development goals. We want to keep people where they are if they want to stay where they are, right? We want to make sure that, we increase GDP. We want to make sure that education is where it needs to be or better. And we want to make sure that everybody has access to the essentials that they need to survive, to thrive. And we look forward to partnering again with everybody on here. And anything that we can do to provide additional information or, work with folks in the region, we will be happy to do that. Would love to do that. So again, Trevor, thanks for the introduction, and hopefully I can go early next time so that I'm not outdone on the presentation.
Yes. No, I know. My apologies.
He was good. Thank you.
Okay, Amy, thank you very much for that interesting presentation as well. One of the things I heard there in your presentation, and it's one of the things I do here for the CTU. One of the things the CTU believes in is ICT for all. And you talked about affordability, and the Caribbean region is not a wealthy region. There's some very wealthy people here, but it's not generally a wealthy region. So affordability, I think, is key to what we need in the region. And that's going to lead to that same ability for inclusion for everyone. And then you also talked about connecting the unconnected. That's something that's also very dear to the CTU's heart. And I think satellite technology has definitely a role to play and is playing a role in making that a reality. And then, of course, being a region prone to disasters, and we seem to be having them more and more frequently, unfortunately, that disaster recovery and response is critical for us as a region. Okay, so thank you very much again, Amy. And I also want to mention that Viasat is a new member of the CTU, and we are very happy to have them as part of the CTU family. So
we're happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let me move on to, we're going to do a two-handed presentation this time from Cloud Carib. We have Mr. Eamonn Sheehy, who is the Director, Public Sector, and also Mr. Scott MacKenzie, the CEO. And they're going to speak to us about achieving greater control and sustainability in digital transformation. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, all protocols being observed. It's an honor to present here today for myself and for our CEO, Scott MacKenzie, on the topic of achieving greater control and sustainability, regional imperatives for digital transformation. And the first thing I think I might say is that achieving greater control, maybe we could change that to achieving greater self-reliance, because ultimately that is what we want to do in the region, is to achieve greater self-reliance and sustainability. Before I go into the meat of the presentation, just a quick one-slide summary of who Cloud Carib is, in case people don't know. And our CEO, Scott, will talk a little bit more about Cloud Carib later in the presentation. We are a Caribbean company headquartered in the Bahamas, and we cover the complete range of managed services and cloud computing services that would be required, from data center all the way through to cybersecurity and, of course, digital transformation. You can find a lot more information on our website, which is cloudcarib.com. So jumping into the presentation, I want to really cover two areas: data sovereignty and data privacy, and sustainable costing models for digital transformation. And then, of course, Scott will cover why choose Cloud Carib. The first thing to say about data sovereignty and data privacy, well, I think we kind of know what data sovereignty is all about. It's been mentioned earlier on today. It was also mentioned on Monday, and it really talks to the jurisdictional control of data and who the legal authority is and how it can be asserted over data. And although this particular statement on data sovereignty or definition talks about jurisdictional boundaries, we already know internationally that some countries have extraterritorial views on where their legal standing goes, particularly the United States of America with the Cloud Act and the Patriot Act. And I'll come back to that in a little bit as well. So what's important is that as the Caribbean develops its digital transformation models, and there's a lot of talk about going to knowledge-based societies, you need to know where your data is. You need to know who accesses that data. Is it secure? And actually, do I control my data, or can somebody else control it? And this is particularly important when you start looking at things like infrastructure as a service and software as a service. And these are fast becoming the norm, particularly with regard to what has happened during the COVID pandemic and the need for people to work remotely and the adoption of consequent cloud services. With regard to data privacy, well, why is that important for the region? Well, first of all, there's quite a few countries in the region have already enacted data privacy legislation or are in the process to do so. Not just the ones that are listed on this particular slide, but we also heard from the OECS that they were in the process to look at data sovereignty and data privacy issues. And these are being modeled predominantly on the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. And that is important and has certain, let's say, consequences. And it's not just me who's saying that the Caribbean countries are moving towards a GDPR type environment for data privacy. Also, the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, in a recent report that they produced, also indicated that Caribbean countries and territories are following the GDPR model. And it is regarded as the gold standard. It's regarded as something that can give individual privacy rights a solid base and can facilitate data sharing and e-governance across the region. And just as an aside here, although it's individual countries that are producing their national legislation on data privacy, maybe it's something that should be considered at the regional level, either through a common standard through CTU or a common standard at CARICOM. That would have a very big impact on the single ICT space, particularly as it relates to the cloud industry sector and the possibility of using regional cloud infrastructure. Having a standard data privacy base would be very, very useful. Again, what is, let's say, interesting on the data protection side, as the Caribbean countries follow the EU's GDPR more closely, and it's very, very tough on data privacy for personal identification information, the EU only recognizes 12 jurisdictions internationally as having adequate legal provisions to host and store European PII data. And the United States is not one of those jurisdictions, just to make that point. And the reason why I'm making that point is because, of course, you need to know exactly where your data is, particularly if you have data privacy legislation, because you may be going against your own data privacy legislation by hosting data in particular jurisdictions, which may have consequences. And as we know, during the COVID pandemic times, we're all using things like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Classroom, Office 365, and even virtual platforms like this particular event platform. So you need to know where the data is stored, how it's being processed, who can have access to the data. It's critical. And the one thing we can say for sure is if you look at the main cloud platforms globally, the likes of Azure, AWS, Google, and you look at where their core data centers are located, something should really jump out at you when you look at the maps that are presented on the slide here. And that basically is to say, where are they in the Caribbean? And the answer is they're not in the Caribbean. And even if they were in the Caribbean, or if there was stacks locally deployed into these platforms, the US government, through the Patriot Act and the Cloud Act, still have rights to access that data. These are US companies, these are companies with cloud infrastructure in the United States of America. So the US will claim jurisdiction over accessing that information. So the question for Caribbean governments, do you want your citizen data to be accessed by foreign governments? Not just the US, but other foreign governments. You have to have a strategy on how that data will be housed, stored, and accessed. Not to, let's say, blow our own trumpet as Cloud Carib, but we have our own cloud infrastructure across 6 locations within the Caribbean and Latin America, and we're adding 3 more. And our cloud infrastructure is ring-fenced. We don't have anything in the United States of America. We don't have anything in Europe. Our data centers are connected within the Caribbean and within Latin America only. And one of the commitments that we have given to governments in the Caribbean is that if we become a client, or you become a client of ours, we will put the infrastructure in your jurisdiction to ensure that data privacy laws that you have are adhered to by us. And I think that is something that is critically important. And that will be the same for commercial clients who are required to host data because of data privacy reasons within the jurisdictions. The second point I quickly want to jump onto is a sustainable costing model for digital transformation. Now, we know there are basically two ways of costing things: capital cost and operational cost. Most ICT projects, particularly government ones in the Caribbean, are capital cost based. They tend to be as a result of getting, let's say, loans or grants from Inter-American Development Bank or World Bank. And these are done as capital cost projects. And they're kind of fixed one-time costs, but they have, I would say, challenges. And these challenges are that digital transformation projects require significant capital investment normally. The life cycle for certain core ICT products is relatively short, 5 to 7 years. That means you're going to have capital expenditure spikes every 5 to 7 years. Can governments in the Caribbean afford these spikes? It's one thing having a very nice big project that you start at the beginning, but you need to be able to sustain it, particularly when you go down the path of digital transformation. You can't just turn off your applications because you can't afford to replace the equipment. So this is something that has to be considered. Also, with capital expenditure, you're guessing what is going to be your requirements over an extended period of time. And that guesswork can be quite difficult to be accurate in its assessment. Also, then you go through generally arduous processes for procurement. So there are many different things that have to be considered when you do capital cost expenditure, which is the norm. We in Cloud Carib would say, well, if you were to move to an operational expenditure model, you're basically paying for the capacity you need now, and you're scaling up that capacity based on a business need. And if you have strategic partnerships over extended periods of time, then you don't have to be concerned about overly complex procurement processes. You've engaged suppliers, service suppliers over a period of time, and they are mandated to supply certain services. So this can allow you to actually roll out applications more quickly. And it also does something, it flattens the cost curve, and the curve will only go up as your business requirement needs scaling up. And it's not only in terms of hardware that we're talking about potential savings, but also software licensing is becoming increasingly complex in cloud environments. You can add virtual VMs to your environment as you grow, but are you sure that you're now covered by licenses for this additional capacity? Licensing is quite complex and becoming increasingly complex. And you need to make sure that you're not suddenly audited by an enterprise and you discover, oops, we're not covered and we now have to pay some big amount of money to get our licenses back on track. And using a service model, like an operating cost service model, is not something new. You already have it within the context of using things like Office 365, etc. So this is not a new trend, but it's an increasing trend. We think moving to an OpEx model will allow you to lease services over time, put the onus on the service provider to improve its service quality, and also it may change the roles and functions of the ICT department. Now I'm quickly going to hand over to Scott, who's just going to go through why Cloud Carib in this region. Scott.
Thank you very much, Eamonn. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Excellent. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, all protocols having been observed. As the Chief Executive of Cloud Carib, please let me restate Eamonn's sentiment that it's a privilege for myself and my team to be here with you today. We'd like to thank the Secretary General, Mr. Rodney Taylor, and the team at the CTU for having this event. I'm here to reinforce our message: achieving greater control and sustainability should be a regional imperative for digital transformation. The future of the Caribbean region is at stake if we fail to attain self-reliance, as many governments have already abandoned the constraints of legacy IT operations to gain efficiencies and improve service. We are speaking here today about cloud, which is no longer a modern approach, but the norm for developed nation states. Whereas the next generation have already become digital natives via mobile. Even infants today can use mobile phones more freely than many of us can, as they fully embrace the future, which is everything as a service, always on and always available. It is my hope that Eamonn has demonstrated Cloud Carib is heavily invested in the Caribbean region As we know, Cloud Carib's team has gained a reputation for being our region's premier provider of trusted cloud by delivering year-over-year service excellence and making localized digital transformation a reality. On a personal note, bringing vision to reality is my life's passion. Slightly over 5 years ago, a vision was stated by the government of Bahamas about what digital transformation meant to them as their delivery partner, which is our role to be a trusted advisor for our clients, which we see as our service delivery partners, to bring their vision of digital transformation to reality. Once we were provided their vision, we began a digital transformation journey with them to modernize the government's practices on how and where they house their compute infrastructure, the networks that connect the infrastructure to the national carrier networks and the world, the provision of a high-density, hyper-converged compute, storage, and cloud network fabric, along with modernization of voice and collaboration services. Today, over 98.6% of the nation's revenues are generated by this very infrastructure. Infrastructure designed, built, operated to be highly resilient, secure, and above all, provide 100% uptime for services locally within the nation's jurisdiction. In the past 5 years, the program has been tested and the infrastructure and service remained always on and always available throughout 3 Category 5 hurricanes. The service is 100% available for mission critical voice and data services during these events. In a modern nation, no downtime or outage of application should be tolerated, as the current younger generations of citizens are now digital natives and expect to work when they want, where they want, and how they want, not 9 to 5. Privacy for citizens, 9 to 5. Data is the new currency of the world. We must protect it for future generations. The world's most valuable companies today are no longer fossil fuel related, but data-driven and knowledge-based businesses. There is no doubt we must protect data by drafting new modern data privacy, data jurisdiction, and data residency laws directly within the regulations of our nations. Protecting development for future generations must become a principal driver in the decisions we make today. Privacy for citizens of the US and those who engage in services provided by US corporations. Yes, via FISA warrant, any government official or agency with a valid FISA warrant, which is provided via top secret warrant and issued to as a top secret instrument, may gain copies of your data without you being able to challenge the authority, jurisdiction, or validity of the warrant for whatever reason. They now have your data, and worst of all, as the instrument is top secret, no US company may let you know that they have received notification or provided access to copies of your data. Developing our region's next generation. Oh, sorry, Eamonn, if you can change the slide. Yes, thank you. Let me be brief on the private cloud, hybrid cloud. Let's go back one. Private cloud is very much focused on data privacy, data residency, and data jurisdiction for mission critical operations. Typically, we see it in government, telco, and healthcare. Hybrid cloud is provided within the region's data centers that we've deployed and is used by more SMB financial services, smaller healthcare clients to maintain jurisdiction and data residency in relations to national data privacy regulations and laws. As a simple question for anyone that asks you to host your data in the US or with a US corporation, when the US government trusts my nation enough to host the CIA or FBI's data here in my region, then I will consider hosting in the US or with the US corporation, but not before. Now on to the next one. Sorry, Eamonn. On the subject of developing people, developing our region's next generations, the key to avoid remaining stuck in legacy IT operations. With that in mind, we have built out the Cloud Carib Center of Excellence located in Nassau, Bahamas. The purpose of the facility is not for profit and designed to have a space within the Bahamas where technologists of the next generation may gather to collaborate and learn from each other and our global team of experts that now call this region home. Please come and visit us the next time you're in Nassau or if you're interested in a localized program. Please let me thank everyone for letting me speak here today, and we hope to meet with each of you very soon. And now back to the moderator.
Thank you, Scott, and also thank you, Eamonn, for a very interesting and eye-opening presentation. I think there was a lot of thought-provoking issues that certainly I wasn't aware of, and I don't know if Josanne was aware of them either. And so it really is something that we really do need to pay attention to. You know, one of the things that I think was made clear in Eamonn's slides was that whilst, yes, some of the states within the Caribbean have moved to upgrade their legislation looking after data protection and privacy, a lot of them, the data I was seeing was 2011. So we obviously have some work to do in the region to sort of bring ourselves up to date. And so I really want you to thank you both for that very thought-provoking presentation. And also to let everyone know that Cloud Carib is, we're very proud to have Cloud Carib as a member of the CTU. Okay, so let me move on so we can hopefully get in some questions and answers. Let me move on then to Mr. David Geary. David is the General Counsel of Digicel Group, and he's going to be speaking to us on regulating the single Caribbean ICT space. David.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Trevor, for that introduction. I'll share my screen, which I think I need to do to show you my slides. Now, can everybody see those?
Yeah.
Yes, great. Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and over the next few minutes, I will speak about regulating the single ICT space, and this is a very important issue. I know we've spoken on many occasions before about this, and I suppose an important point is that when we talk about a single Caribbean ICT space, we also need to be mindful that we're really talking also about a global ICT space, because that is what the market has become. We're in a global digital economy now, and it's quite important that we adapt this and we equip the Caribbean with a harmonized regulatory and legal framework that's fit for purpose for the age. To date, we've had a national approach to regulation and legal frameworks. That has worked well for the liberalization of telecoms over the past 20 years, or 20 years ago, in fact, really. But I mean, we have to be honest and say this approach is not adequate for the global digital economy, and it's quite problematic for our region. Big tech, and we all know who they are becoming the main competitors, not just of telcos, but also of many of the local industries that exist in the Caribbean today. And we can see over the COVID pandemic how they're dominating and moving into new sectors. And telecommunications is just one. They're going to be doing food delivery and grocery delivery, also medical consultations, everything you can imagine that can be done digitally. These companies are getting into it, and they will dominate them. And there'll be no companies left to regulate, honestly, in the region, if we do not put a framework in place. And I say that quite genuinely. I would, predict, and I'm sure many in these industries would agree that, it's an open question now whether or not, media is going to continue to exist, local newspapers, local radio stations, whether they can continue at all, whether there will be any by 2030. And telecoms, you could say the same. So this is not an esoteric question. This is quite important, and it's something that we can do. But over the next few minutes, I'll explain why it is urgent that we act now, and also what the solution is. And I mean, quite in brief, we can agree a set of principles in the region, and then amend our ICT laws to give effect to these principles, and then the regulators will have the safeguards and the tools they need to protect society and our communities. So, just moving on to the state of regulation today. I mean, what's going on, and we see this in the ITU and many international organizations. It's no different to what big oil and big tobacco are doing in international organizations. Everything they can manage to do to try and delay, frustrate, and stop regulation is what's going on, right? There's been a lot of books written about this. I mean, you can read them. Certainly, I've read these, and many of you may have. In fact, I mean, it's stunning when you read these books and see what's going on. These are written by insiders, and they give a view as to how this has happened. The fact that these are companies that just care only about making money. They know about the problems that are going on, and their modus operandi is to make as much money as possible by driving engagement, and content that is divisive and so on drives more engagement. They actually prefer to see this level of engagement because they make more money. And don't take it from me, you can read the books. In fact, we have a show in Ireland, a talk show on TV every Friday night that and the host often says, when something's presented, there's one for everyone in the audience. So actually, if there's any ministers listening or regulators, there's one for everyone in the audience, right? We'll actually send you these books as a present, I suppose, from Digicel, because it's so important that I think we all understand what's going on. But I mean, in brief, this is not something that's happening somewhere else in the world. I think there's often been a notion, oh, well, big tech is for a different part of the world and they exist somewhere else, and maybe the US or the EU should regulate them, and there's not much we can do here. The opposite is actually true. It's because we don't have the legal frameworks here. These companies are experimenting in the Caribbean. They're experimenting on Caribbean people. I mean, read the books. The experimentation on how to usurp democracy happened in Trinidad and Tobago by Cambridge Analytica and some other countries here. The EU brought in rules some years ago, the GDPR, which restricted how data of teenagers can be used. These companies apply those laws to the French West Indies, but not everywhere else. And we discussed this at a Canto conference. And now we see that they have their own research which acknowledges that Instagram is damaging to teenage girls. They know that, and they still didn't apply the safeguards that had become a global standard at that point in the Caribbean. They know about meddling in elections, etc. They know about this, and here's what's terrifying: these companies are years ahead. I mean, while we're still talking about basic regulation, they're in a totally different space. They already know that we're going to do this sooner or later, and they're 10 years ahead. I was watching Click Online, the BBC show on technology the other day, and they were given an expose about how big tech and Facebook are doing. They're researching mind reading tech, so they have technology now that allows people to give instructions to machines using their mind. They don't have to use their hands, right? They put on a sensor on your brain, and you can instruct the machine to do things, and it will, right? But what the research is doing now is they're looking at the other way around. Can the machine influence your mind, right? Can you? Honestly, this is going on, right? And this is extremely dangerous. That companies like this that we already know can't be trusted are. And where do you think they're going to experiment, by the way? The track record, we already know where they're going to experiment. They're going to go to the countries where there's no laws or regulations. And we already know that they've experimented on the people of the Caribbean before, and that this is what we're facing. So it's extremely concerning where it's going, and the need for action is very urgent. Now, you may say, well, that's great, Digicel, you're always talking about this, but why is it important to you? Well, it is important because in a converged market, which we're in now, we are competing, as are our colleagues in Flow and TSTT and so on. And indeed, the last speakers explained very well what the dangers here are. We are competing, with to provide services, the same services, against companies that are able to monetize their services by all sorts of nefarious ways that we don't engage in. So they have a huge competitive advantage here. In addition, there's a long track record, well established, and again in the press, about how they seek to eliminate competitors and engage in anti-competitive practices. We don't have the tools in this region to protect against these problems. So we have a very unfair market, not to mention that these competitors don't follow any rules, they don't pay tax, they don't pay for their inputs. It's a very nice business model if you can get it, but it's totally unfair on the rest of us who are competing against them. And we, WhatsApp competes against our voice services, we have video streaming, and there's OTT video streaming, we're all subject to different rules. And this just isn't right. And this is not sustainable, and we need a framework in the region. But luckily, a lot of the work has been done already. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, what we don't need to happen in the region is for some big report to be written about who are OTTs and what are the abuses, because that's not necessary anymore. We already know this. The work has been done in many other countries. And we can look at the advantages of having the right frameworks. We look at Australia, the ACCC use their competition law powers to do a market review, and they established that, Facebook and Google are dominant in the market for advertising. They're abusing that, and local media companies like newspapers are losing out. France did the same thing, and they forced the big tech to contribute and pay for the media content. As I said, in this region, there won't be any newspapers, unless we equip our regulators with similar powers so they can protect our media in a similar way. And we can look at South Korea. They introduced laws that oblige big tech to register locally and so on. Canada is looking at broadcasting rules that apply to big tech in the same way. And then we talked about closing the digital divide in some of the presentations earlier. And I was very proud to be involved in the UN Broadband Commission report on 21st century financing for infrastructure, which was just published on Sunday. And this clearly argues that every company that derives benefit from the use of broadband networks, and that includes satellite or any technology, should contribute to the cost, right, of the use and of connecting. So this is a global conversation. But as I said, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. The Caribbean can look at these other regions where they've studied these matters and devise solutions, and then take the key principles from these and amend our ICT laws so we can have a harmonized approach across the region. So just very briefly, what are these principles? There aren't many. Requiring the local registration of digital platforms above a certain size, so that they have an obligation to appoint local representatives and to engage with regulators and provide information requested by regulators. This has already been done in South Korea and other countries. Ensuring that some provisions of our ICT laws apply to service providers regardless of where they're located. Filing accounts with the regulator, details of traffic usage, letting the regulator know what's going on, in other words. I think there's an important piece about tackling false information, and the court system at present is very difficult for anyone to get behind who is posting false information and so on. This has been studied in other countries, and you can simplify this to make it much more straightforward to engage with these big tech companies to ensure they fix such problems. Then competition law. This is identified clearly as a main important tool in the EU, the UK, Australia, the United States. Germany, so many different jurisdictions have looked at this. Even ironically, Professor Tim Wu, who is the professor who is credited with coming up with the phrase net neutrality, he has written a book, and I have it in the slide earlier, about how antitrust law or competition law is urgently needed to tackle this problem. So what we have in this region is we have some countries with competition laws, Barbados and Jamaica notably, with modern competition frameworks. Other countries don't. But again, we can amend our ICT laws by putting in competition law provisions. It's only a couple of articles that says that all digital service providers are subject to these rules. And again, we can look to the Treaty of Chaguaramas and improve the role of the Caribbean Competition Commission, allow the sharing of resources and give them a role in conducting market reviews and so on. And let's give ourselves the tools. We don't know what problems are going to emerge. We don't know what the outcome of market reviews conducted under competition law are going to be, but we should at least equip ourselves with the tools, and it's quite urgent that we do it now. And then turning to the vexed issue of online harms, again, a clear requirement that illegal content is removed within certain timeframes, enable ministers and regulators to identify harmful content and that should be removed as well. Have a transparency report requirement, so platforms have to tell regulators how they deal with this content. Again, an authorized representative, and have sanctions across the Caribbean for non-compliance. I mean, the key here is that each country acting alone would find perhaps that big tech would try and persuade them not to take action, but acting together as a region, they won't be able to do that. The principles are already established. The harms and the problems are already, documented and identified. We would say what we need to do is create a genuine Caribbean ICT digital space where the same rules apply in every country. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can just make amendments to existing ICT laws and equip ourselves with the tools that regulators really urgently need to properly regulate the digital economy. So thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Okay, David, thank you very much for, again, I think another very thought-provoking presentation. Certainly the CTU is very supportive of harmonization of regulations. So you don't have to talk to us about that. We do believe that that's the way we should go. I think one of the things that are important for us to note is you're suggesting to us is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I certainly think that that's the case, but certainly we just need to make sure that it's going to be tailored to our requirements in the region here. There is a question, there's a series of questions, and this comes from Ms. Lynette Taylor, and she wants to know, how do you compete against big tech? Does it make sense to compete or use the platforms to your business's advantages? And what are the challenges? It sounds, David, that is your question, but I'd give anyone the opportunity to answer, because our time is very limited, unfortunately.
Would you like me to answer?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
I think it seems like it's directing itself.
Apologies. Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, I mean, we offer the same services in many respects. There are voice services, video calling services, video streaming services. As I'm sure the questioner will know, we in Digicel have various digital apps for streaming of content and so on. All of this is in direct competition, if you will, with services that big tech provide. And big tech is obviously getting to many different areas. In addition to telecoms and so on. I mean, Facebook has announced just recently they want to compete directly on telecoms. But also you have to look at the other services the telcos provide. So there's a converged market where it's not like it's different markets anymore, where there's telcos do this and Facebook is social media or something over there. There's a converged market where people see these services as very much interoperable. And I'll give you a very simple example. If you're making a phone call on your phone, you know, and if you have WhatsApp, for example, you know, what does everybody, you know, listening in to the meeting today do? You know, I'll bet most people or many people will say, oh, well, it's just easier to press WhatsApp. And then you look at whether people will send a text message or a WhatsApp message and so on. And you can quickly see that there's a huge crossover there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I don't think we have time for any other questions. So I'd just like to thank all of our 4 presenters. They all sponsored and made possible this great week of events. So that is Miss Amy Mehlman from the Viasat, Mr. Eamonn Sheehy, and Mr. Scott MacKenzie of Cloud Carib, and Mr. Geary from the Digicel group, and last but not least, the QRC boy, Mr. Darryl Duke of TSTT. Thank you very much for a very interesting and thought-provoking series of presentations. And over to you.
Thank you very much, Trevor, and to your panel. And I've made copious notes myself. And I'm sure so many other people would have been a lot of issues that we're not going to be able to skirt.
No, that's right.
No two ways about it. So we really, we have some catching up to do.
That's right.
And we have some navel gazing to do. And we also have some very hard work to do if we're going to achieve what we say that we're setting out to achieve. So we'd like to thank you all, the panelists, and Trevor, who's led this panel very nicely from the CTU, and let you know that we wrap this session and give you enough time to join the session coming up, which is the interactive discussion on rural connectivity policy. We'll be right back.